Welcome to Ground Truth. Join Sam Faddis as he looks for truth from those on the ground, in the middle of the action with key insights regarding critical national and international issues. Listen for discussions and interviews on national security, terrorism, politics, espionage, the paranormal, and weapons of mass destruction.
Welcome, I'm Sam Faddis. This is WKCV 103.5 FM, voice of Keystone College in La Plume, Pennsylvania, which is a little less beautiful than usual today with the gray fall weather coming in. Most of the time on this program, what we've been talking about to date is national security and terrorism and espionage. And we're going to shake things up a little bit, I think, as we're rolling toward Halloween, take this in a little bit of different direction, and talk about things paranormal, I guess is the best way to describe it. I will say up front that I count myself as a healthy skeptic when it comes to these kinds of things, but I'm also not arrogant enough to think that we fully understand everything that's going on around us. So to help us explore this area, a great guest, Mark Keyes. He is the director of the Pennsylvania Paranormal Association. He is a commentator now on a couple of different programs on Travel Channel, one called Paranormal 911 and one called Haunted Hospitals. So this is a subject he knows. Mark, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with this. I mean, I've laid out up front that I'm kind of a skeptic here, but just to kind of set a foundation, what do you do? What's the Pennsylvania Paranormal Association?
We are call it a semi-professional paranormal resolution team. We work with psychic mediums, very credible psychic mediums who do that as a full-time occupation, not necessarily for a team, but in their personal lives. And we try to identify causes of paranormal activity for clients, whether it's a home or a business. And then through the use of different resources, such as a psychic medium, we try to stop the haunting for them.
Okay, so you guys are Ghostbusters, basically.
Well, yeah, I guess that's the fun way of putting it.
All right, I'm not going to ask you if you have that cool ambulance thing that they have. But,
no, I can't say I do.
So give me an idea. What are we talking about? I mean, this is real life now, not a movie. What are the kinds of things that people report?
Right, and everything that we work with really revolves around energy. So we're finding quite a lot of similarities now from what the more scientific-based paranormal teams that do research are looking at, kind of mimicking some things in quantum physics. It's really similar type of theories that are coming out of both. So people have activity in their home, and instantly they jump to the conclusion that they might have a ghost in their house because they're reporting things like lights turning on and off by themselves. Maybe they hear things like footsteps or voices, doors opening and shutting, physical things moving. A lot of people report missing items, and then they'll go back and look in the same place, like a set of keys they placed on the counter, disappear. 10 minutes later, they go back and find them on the counter again. So I think because of everybody's conditioning from TV and the movies, they jump to the conclusion that they have ghosts in their house, and quite often people feel threatened by that. They're scared, again, because of what they learned on TV. Ghosts are scary. They're going to hurt me. So we go in and try to identify the cause of that activity. Sometimes we can find very natural causes that people are just missing on their own. You know, it takes an outside person to come in and take a look, and you can find a natural cause. And other times we find things that fall into a paranormal category, and that's when we start working with our psychic medium. And I'm kind of like you. I came in as a skeptic. The only reason I got in this field was to answer the question for myself. Are ghosts real? Is psychic ability real? I'm not somebody who was born a psychic. I am not a medium. I can't see or talk to ghosts. I didn't live in a haunted house. But I had just an overwhelming fascination with anything sci-fi, from ghosts, UFOs. For some crazy reason, when I was a kid, I loved spontaneous human combustion. I don't know why. That just grabbed me, and I couldn't get enough of it.
You don't mean you like to combust. You mean
I like learning about it, yes.
Okay,
yeah,
all
I
right.
think it'd be a different story if it was me. Which seems to have disappeared. I had two things I was just talking about. That and what people used to call, boy, I can't even remember the term. It's been so long. This frothy, energetic fluid, I guess, that would come from mediums as they were doing seances.
Oh, really? I never heard of that.
The term will come to me here,
Okay.
but it seems to have disappeared. You don't hear about that anymore. So I just wanted to get out there out of pure curiosity and try to find out if any of this was real. And I started studying psychic mediums first. And they were a little easier to find than people with haunted houses, especially, you go back 20 years ago. If somebody had a haunted house, they weren't advertising that.
Right.
So I started working with some mediums I could find, and I found that there were a lot of different kinds, a lot of different levels of ability. And, people who really, like anything, learning to play the piano, if you put a lot of time into it, you can develop yourself to a much higher level. There were a few that I found were just absolutely amazing. With no information, no questions, no responses. I just sat there and listened to what they had to say. We're coming up with some amazing information. Once I studied psychics and psychic mediums for a while, I wanted to start studying homes and businesses that claimed they had hauntings going on there. And the easiest way for me to do that was to join an established team already. So my wife and I were fortunate enough to have a father-in-law who worked with a gentleman who was on a team. We got on board that team and went out and did some cases with them for about 2 years, and I had very, very little experiences. So although at that point I kind of believed in psychic ability, I wasn't sure about ghosts, and 2 years really didn't answer it for me. But what I did find out was that there were a lot of people who were very sincere and very scared and wanted some answers on what was going on in their house, and they wanted it stopped. So my wife and I decided at some point we wanted to break away from that team that was more of a technical investigation team, and we wanted to put together a resolution team. And I have a background in psychology, so I wanted to study sort of the interaction between psychic mediums in a haunted location and the people at a haunted location, and if there were ghosts, the interaction and the connectivity, I guess, of the energies between the living and the dead, and the responses of the living to particular activity. So I started my own team, and again, I didn't even know if I believed in ghosts yet, but I wanted to bring these mediums into these haunted locations and see if they could actually make a difference there. Could they stop the activity? Would the people later, after a visit, tell us that the activity stopped? So I wanted to, put the psychics through the test. I wanted to go out and see what I could document, see what I could experience. And to be honest, unlike TV, it literally was probably about 4 or 5 years before I started coming to a conclusion myself that, something beyond normal stuff was going on.
So when I think of the term medium, which you keep using it, I think of someone who has the capacity to talk to the dead. That's probably not a particularly technical explanation, but to communicate with people who have passed away. That's what you're talking about.
Correct, yes. People in the metaphysical, spiritual community like to separate kind of what they do. Again, I'm not one of them, but if you have a psychic would have the ability to maybe pick up on past or future events for the person, more of what's going on in their life, particular details to a particular person, where a medium has the ability to communicate with the dead. They claim they'll have spirits come to them. And again, this is level of development, though. Some people may just be able to see them. Some people may be able to hear them. Some people may be able to have not what we would know as a conversation, but communicate information back and forth. And, they say that all psychics aren't mediums, but all mediums are psychic as well. So there is a difference.
Have you seen ghosts in the course of this? Is that a thing that happens, or is that just an invention of TV and movies? Is that you don't actually see?
I would say after about 15 years of doing this, I'll give you a maybe.
All right. Can you elaborate on that?
I can. I have seen.
What are we? If you see one, what are we talking about seeing?
Well,
it's not Casper, I'm assuming. But
correct. Yeah, and this is up for debate as well. I have my own theories here. If people who can see ghosts are even seeing those with their eyes, the mediums I have worked with, the ones that I trust, tell me that when they see a ghost, they will see it in various levels. And there's also a difference between what they see. There might be what would be a ghost, which most people refer to as like a human soul that is stuck earthbound. They died, they stayed in our frequency, or whatever you want to call it, our realm. A spirit, a lot of mediums will refer to as someone who has died and crossed over, or if you believe in angels or spirit guides, they would be in the spirit category. So they are sort of where they're supposed to be, but they can connect with people who could see them here. Our medium and several other mediums have told me that when they see, sometimes they will see someone standing in front of them, solid, just like you or I standing right there, and they can't differentiate if it's in their mind or if it's out in front, but to them it looks like someone standing there, total solid form with features. Other times they might see just a shadowy figure with no features. Other times it might look like a complete person, just sort of see-through, or maybe glowing a little bit. Other times they will see something in their mind's eye, where they can see it, like if I say a pink elephant right now, if you can envision that in your head,
Sure.
they'll see a person standing, say, in a doorway, but in their mind's eye.
Right.
So there's different ways that they're seeing, sort of say. So for myself, I have seen what I'll call different shadows or maybe light energy. I've never seen what I could say is there is a person standing right there. Just different light anomalies that were very unusual. Some in areas where there were no windows or light sources with the lights out, where I've seen these almost columns of light, sometimes just weird, almost shapeless, grayish mists. So, yeah, unfortunately, I'm the guy who goes on more cases than anybody else on our team, and I've probably seen the least amount of ghosts, if you will.
First, let me take it in this direction. We're sitting here in northeast Pennsylvania, north of Scranton. Are there particular areas around here, particular locations that seem to be haunted, that are associated with paranormal activity?
For people who travel around the country, really, Pennsylvania and the northeast of our country really seems to be a hotbed, going all the way up to Connecticut, Massachusetts. And, kind of the theory behind it is it was some of the most emotional incidents in the development of our country happened here. And, that's one of the theories, that when you have a significant emotional event or a traumatic event, somebody dies, they might get stuck here, or you might have what's called a residual haunting, where it's not a conscious spirit per se, but it's almost a repeat, like you're watching a movie. It's not something that's aware of you. It's not aware of itself. It's just a repeat that some people claim that they see over and over. The Northeast itself is a really hot spot, but almost anywhere in northeastern or southeastern Pennsylvania seems to be pretty active as compared to, say, central Pennsylvania, western Pennsylvania. Again, it might be due to population, or a lot of people look at even geological factors. What's in the ground, does that magnify energy in particular locations?
So I'm getting the impression at this point in the conversation that you started off as a skeptic. You're not really skeptical anymore. I mean, that you're a believer that there is in fact something there, or something is happening. In other words,
at this
not
point,
people imagining things.
Correct. Yeah, I've just seen far too much, far too often, talked to far too many people, and there's not one particular age range or, geo-economical type of person that witnesses this stuff. We've done everything from just open fields with no structures on it to small little house trailers, all the way up to, these multi-million-dollar mansions. And we've worked for police officers, doctors, dentists, nurses, blue-collar workers, car salesmen, you name it. Just wide variety, people from all walks of life. There's no age, color, creed, condition, any of that comes into play. Everybody seems to have experiences from all walks of life. And
so after all this time, what do you think it is? That's probably a horrible way to phrase that question, but I mean, if this is not people just making things up, or if we're dealing with something real, what are we dealing with?
Yeah, well, I would have to say that there is some type of consciousness that does go on after we die. Most people who have some kind of faith, believe, and again, it's based on faith, that, you die, you go to heaven, hell, and I know there's a lot of other different faiths out there that have some differing views, but some people... Not a lot. Well, some people believe that maybe there's an in-between, too, that some people do get stuck, and life is sloppy, and there's no reason to believe that death isn't sloppy either. It's nature. So, I think that for particular reasons, and what I've found in the spiritual community and the metaphysical community is that these people really believe in free will, even after death. And a lot of religions even talk about that. I do think it's possible that if you die for whatever reason, maybe you don't even know you're dead, or maybe because of the way you lived your life, the light comes, and I don't know if that happens, but a lot of people claim that. They see a light and feel a pull towards it. Our mediums talk about that, and they claim that that's often where they send these people when they work with them. A lot of people, because of their lifestyle, are afraid to go into the light. So they say, hey, I know I'm safe right here. I'm not going there and getting judged and going somewhere I don't want to. So there's, just millions of reasons why someone might stay here. We find a lot of people that may have been intoxicated or heavily under the influence of some kind of drug. They die suddenly, may stay in that confused state. while they're in this deceased condition and for whatever reason miss their opportunity to go.
So you stay drunk as a ghost?
That's what I'm told, is that they could stay, I don't know if you want to call it drunk, but you die a certain vibration, and you kind of get stuck in that vibration. And
so if I'm having weird stuff, excuse my terminology here, but I'm having weird things going on, unexplained things going on in my house. I get to the point where I'm thinking, okay, this is not just normal. It's not just that I can't remember where I put my keys. I call you guys. You guys come in, and let's assume you do your thing, and you're satisfied that, okay, yeah, there's something here. There's a paranormal explanation. I thought I heard you say earlier that you have a capacity to try to resolve this situation.
yes.
So I guess what my question is, so what happens next? Like I brought you guys in, you did your thing. All right, yeah, there's something else in the house with you here. And I'm looking at you saying, well, I'd really like it if they would leave now.
Yeah.
How do you make that happen?
Well, a lot of people will go out and get something like sage or incense, much like the church would use, and they're doing the same thing exactly. Trying to, again, if we talk frequency, depending on what you're burning, frankincense, sage, whatever, it's got its own specific frequency. So the theory behind that is that you are changing the frequency of the area there and hopefully pushing anything negative out. That doesn't work too often. I have a pile of theories behind why I feel that is. But some people try clergy, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. So we've tested all these different resources out. For us, the best way that we found to actually resolve a case would be to work with a developed psychic medium who has the capacity to first identify what's there, understand why they are stuck there in the first place, and then they almost have to act as counselors to that particular spirit and work at trying to get them, again, if I could say, go into the light. When I started this, I was the kid who always asked why. It drove my psychic medium nuts because she would, explain, I'm going to try to release them now. I'm like, well, why? What do you mean release? Visually explain that to me. I'm a very visual person. I need concrete concepts here. So she would tell me that quite often, she was born Catholic and kind of has a Catholic background. So she would pray, but she would pray for some divine assistance, for maybe the light to appear. And she claims that she would sometimes see a light appear. Other times she might see a bridge appear or a vortex of light. Sometimes it's just a doorway of light that would open. But in any event, it would be some kind of indicator that she's supposed to direct the person in that direction. Sometimes that would work, sometimes it wouldn't. She would claim if the spirit would not go of its own free will, she would call for some additional assistance. And she has explained to me, just like if anybody's been to a psychic medium for a reading, maybe at their office, they will say that loved ones or friends who have passed on will come for a reading. They'll just show up. She seems to have the ability to do that for dead people as well. So if you have a husband who died for whatever reason, stayed behind, maybe he's got, parents or wife or somebody on the other side, she'll ask for, again, divine guidance to have someone brought to this person that can help pull him out of there. And sometimes that works. We have some more darker cases and some cases where we believe we have some maybe violent ghosts in the house where they were just refusing to go. So our medium at that point would claim to call on what she considers her angels to come in. And
so we're talking, not all ghosts are doing just taking your keys, or I don't mean to obsess with that, but I mean what you laid out before were things that were maybe annoying but relatively innocuous. And
right.
Okay, maybe that freaks me out a little bit that something's happening here I don't understand and things are disappearing. I'm not thinking horror movie, I'm about to die here thing, but
right.
Sometimes these things are not so benign. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and nobody's been stabbed with a knife by a ghost, but there are certain situations where they're more negative hauntings where people claim they're getting scratched, punched, kicked, tripped going downstairs and, getting broken arms and stuff just from the fall. But more often than not, we find that people may exhibit a bit of what they call empathic ability. They seem to be able to pick up on the emotions of other people, living people, but also deceased people as well. So we have many, many cases where people say I was laying in bed and I woke up, I felt all this pressure on my chest. It felt like, someone was holding me down to the bed. So we'd bring our medium in, and 9 times out of 10, she'd say, wow, somebody had a heart attack in this bed. So the people, I believe, are picking up on the sensation of, that energy that was there from that, not necessarily, have a ghost on top of them, pinning them down. But, the point I'm trying to get to is that people will pick up personality and, say, ailments of a ghost sometimes, as strange as that sounds. I seem to have found that over and over with different people doing research. You get the information from our medium, and you talk to the people, and then you find out, our medium gives us a name, and you can do some research on them and find out that the ailments that the living person, now the client, is complaining about was identical to what that person had gone through in life. They could have been, a very hostile alcoholic, let's say, and, maybe had, liver cancer and had all this pain because of that. And the living person who could pick up on that energy seems to start taking on those traits. So it could be, kind of debilitating in that way. In cases where we've found suicide victims, there's an overwhelming amount of depression that seems to take over a family. More than one person will start saying, we just moved into this house. We were a happy family until we got here. 2 months after we moved in, everybody's at each other's throats, and just a huge amount of depression now. That's kind of the dangerous part.
So when people are living in these kinds of situations, I know we're getting short on time here, but, in the horror movie, what always happens is the ghost story is that a bunch of weird stuff happens and somebody's scared out of their mind, and then they wake up the next morning and they keep living in the same house. And every time I see that scene, I'm like, man, if that's me, and I've seen the ghost 3 times and all kinds of weird stuff is happening. I don't know where I'm sleeping, but I'm not sleeping in this
I'm out
house
of there
anymore. I mean, do people literally just flee houses or move out?
We've had people do that, yeah, or at least particular family members would leave and refuse to come back. But in 15 years, I think about 3 occasions, I've had our medium, Virginia, tell clients, I think the best thing for you is to move out of the house. Just because of the history of the place and maybe the history of even the block they're on if they live in a city area. It's just so negative that you can't clean it all up. And that person may be psychically open themselves, and they're going to just keep getting hit with all this energy. And it kills me when she says that, because it's not an easy thing for people to do, is just to pick up and move. That's a tough thing. But
going to be hard to sell your house after that, too.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, a lot of people don't want that getting out.
Well, look, I think we're running out of time here, but I wanted to save a couple of minutes for you to talk about. I gave you a real brief intro, but just a couple of minutes to talk about, in a little more fulsome manner, what you're doing now and what you're involved with.
Yeah, so currently I'm working for Travel Channel on a show called Paranormal 911. It's going into season 2. Season 1, I was on haunted hospitals and Paranormal 911. And basically, kind of in both scenarios, people who have had experiences will go in and tell their story, and myself and a couple other people are acting as commentators to give some explanation to what the people are talking about. And I have 2 books out. One is called, I'm actually a retired Pennsylvania State Trooper, so I have a book out called Chasing Shadows, a criminal investigator's look into the paranormal. And that was, I tried to give as objective a look at this as I could possibly do. This was my journey. I wasn't sure what to buy one way or another. I wanted to believe it, but I just couldn't. So I went out there, and what I experienced, I wrote down, and then I wrote a book about it. The second book is called The Upper Darby Poltergeist. Upper Darby's a town right outside of Philadelphia. That was a case we did in 2010. It was the most physically active case I've ever been involved with. I did not believe the clients when they first called, and the intensity of the activity, the amount, and how often it was happening was just too much. And I'm like, no way, they're exaggerating. This can't be true. And we went down, and this, I think, was probably the case that stands out for me amongst over 200 cases that sort of solidified at least paranormal activity to me. We were physically seeing on 3 different investigations things moving, shadows, toys turning on by themselves, quarters being thrown all over the house, falling out of thin air. It was just an amazing amount of physical activity, and we were able to document a lot of that. So because it impacted me so much, I actually wrote a book specifically about that case.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for being here, Mark. We look forward to talking to you again sometime.
Thanks for having me here, and I'd love to come back.
And thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on Ground Truth.